beginning the crash. The sky above planet Vera burned red, streaked with ribbons of molten energy. Smoke coiled into black spirals, and the remnants of a once proud city floated among jagged spires and fractured glass. Lieutenant Kayla Rhine, captain of the Veran Star Guard, lay twisted among the wreckage. Her armor was scorched, cracked along the seams, and one arm dangled uselessly, held in place only by shards of broken plating. Pain radiated from her bones, but she did not cry. On Vera, crying was a luxury of the weak, and weakness had no place in a soldier's life. Her people, the Verans, had ruled their sector of the galaxy for centuries, balancing diplomacy with force. They were known for their discipline, their advanced technology, and their unyielding pride. To accept help from anyone outside their species was unthinkable. But Kayla's pride was irrelevant now. Her cruiser had been caught in an ambush, torn apart by an unknown fleet that moved with terrifying precision. She had survived the initial blast, but one wrong move would leave her a corpse among the ruins. A shadow passed over her, and Kayla's eyes snapped open. He was human. At least, that was the closest approximation. He was small, barely standing as tall as a Veran female, with a lean frame that looked utterly fragile against the weight of her injuries. He wore ragged clothing that did not even seem to be protective armor, and yet there was no fear in his stance. He moved with careful precision, kneeling beside her as if he had done this 1,000 times. "I can help," he said, his voice rough but calm. Kayla froze. Her mind raced, calculating the possibilities. Humans were primitive. She had seen their species only in rare transmissions. Their technology was laughable. They could barely reach their own neighboring planets, let alone survive in open space. Yet here he was, touching her broken arm, his hand steady as he assessed the damage. "We don't do this," she said finally, her voice brittle. "Do what?" he asked, keeping his gaze level with hers. "Accept aid from others, especially weaker species." He paused, considering her words. Then he smiled faintly. "Well, I guess we do things differently." Learning to trust. Kayla let him work. Her jaw tightened as he stripped away the shattered plating, revealing the splintered bone beneath. She felt raw, vulnerable. Every nerve screamed in pain, and yet she did not lash out. She had been trained for endurance, for survival, but never for this, being cared for by someone so human. The man worked with precision, using tools Kayla had never seen. Tiny instruments, wires, and mechanical braces, all improvised from what seemed like scraps he had scavenged from the ruins. Despite the primitive appearance, they worked. Her bones realigned, held together by materials that should not have supported her weight, yet did. "Pain levels?" he asked, his voice gentle but professional. Kayla stared at him, shocked that he had asked such a thing. "I am tolerable," she muttered. He gave a short laugh. "We humans usually complain louder." The simplicity of the statement sent a jolt through her. It was absurdly human, strange, comforting, and terrifying. As the hours passed, Kayla began to notice more about him. He was curious, intelligent, and surprisingly resourceful. He asked questions about her people, her technology, and her armor, not to exploit it, but to understand. His fascination was genuine. "You could have left me here," she said at one point, resting against a fractured wall. "A human shouldn't survive this." "I could say the same for you," he replied, "but I didn't." There was a pause, a quiet moment in which Kayla realized something profound. She had survived countless battles, faced betrayals from allies, and endured pain no human could imagine. Yet the fear she felt now was not from injury or war. It was from trust. Trust was alien. Acceptance of help was alien. and yet, somehow, it felt like relief. Days turned into nights. Kayla's body healed faster than she expected. The man, Daniel, as she learned to call him, never stopped working. He scavenged parts from the wreckage, modified them, and found ways to stabilize her cruiser. Though she initially resisted his efforts, she began to rely on them. Their interactions were brief, careful. Kayla had pride, and humans were unpredictable. Yet Daniel had a way of grounding her, of making the impossible seem practical. He treated her injuries not as a weakness to exploit, but as a problem to solve. "You know," he said one evening, as they watched the twin moons rise over the shattered cityscape, "I think you're tougher than you admit." Kayla blinked. "Toughness is irrelevant if you die alone." "Then don't die alone," he replied simply. Those words lingered. She had survived entire wars, entire betrayals, entire invasions, and yet, nothing had forced her to consider companionship. Humans were strange, chaotic creatures. But maybe that chaos was what she needed. The threat returns. Just as Kayla began to allow herself small moments of trust, the enemy returned. A fleet of dark, angular ships appeared in orbit, weapons drawn, scanning for signs of life. The same fleet that had destroyed her city. The same fleet she had sworn to fight. Kayla's instincts screamed at her to engage, to fight, to die fighting. But Daniel placed a firm hand on her shoulder. "You can't fight them alone. Not like this. Trust me." She froze, anger and pride flaring. She was a Varen Starguard, trained to survive and command. How could this human possibly understand? Yet she remembered how he had healed her, how he had fixed what her own people could not, how he had brought ingenuity and logic to chaos. Reluctantly, she allowed him to guide her. Together, they devised a plan. Daniel suggested using the damaged cruiser's core to create a diversion, a false signature that would lure the enemy away. It was risky, but it leveraged Kayla's technology with his improvisation. She had no choice but to trust him. The plan worked. The enemy fleet took the bait, leaving the planet unscathed. Kayla watched the ships disappear, her mind reeling. A human had outsmarted her enemy. Her pride bristled, but it was tempered by awe. A bond forms. In the aftermath, Kayla and Daniel repaired the cruiser further, preparing for the journey home, or wherever they could find safety. Kayla began to talk more openly about her people, her past victories, and her losses. Daniel shared stories of Earth, of human resilience, and of moments when compassion had made the impossible possible. "What you humans lack in technology," Kayla admitted one night, "you make up for in something I cannot name." "Ingenuity," Daniel suggested. "Perhaps. Or stubbornness. Or hope. You have something we lost." Their bond grew, subtle but undeniable. It was not a bond of shared neural resonance, as Varens experienced, but something just as profound, a conscious choice to rely on each other, to trust despite differences, to heal despite past pain. The journey ahead. With the cruiser stabilized, Kayla faced a choice: return to her people or remain on this primitive planet with a human who had broken every expectation she had held about trust and aid. She transmitted a message to her command. Survivors had been located, and she would lead the recovery. Yet when the transmission ended, she turned to Daniel. "I could leave," she said softly. "I could come with you," he replied, "but someone has to help the rest of us survive here too." She looked at him, recognizing the humanity she had dismissed so easily. The same ingenuity and care that had saved her now illuminated her understanding of hope, healing, and connection. "Then I will return," she said. "But I will never forget this place or you." Daniel smiled, a mixture of relief and admiration. And I won't forget you. Ending broken expectations, new beginnings. The cruiser lifted off the planet's surface, gleaming silver against the fractured red sky. Kayla stood at the helm, her body healed, her mind sharper than ever. Daniel remained beside her, a reminder that even the smallest, most unexpected allies could shift the course of entire worlds. Kayla realized that her expectations had been broken. Humanity had surprised her, not with technology, but with resilience, compassion, and ingenuity. She had learned that survival was not enough. Healing, trust, and connection mattered as much as any strategy or weapon. As the stars stretched into hyperspace, Kayla finally allowed herself a small smile. The galaxy was vast, full of dangers, betrayals, and heartbreaks. But now she knew it was also full of possibility. And this time, she would not face it alone.